Chapter 4. Old Journals. Breaking into the restricted archive of the Glass Academy of First Measures was easier than it should have been, which told me either the Academy trusted its locks too much, or had severely underestimated the educational power of poverty. Rich students learned theory. Poor assistants learned which hinges screamed, which clerks drank themselves sleepy after inventory, and which bronze window latch could be lifted with a bent calibration pin and a prayer aimed at no god in particular. I crouched outside the North Archive window after the third night bell, soaked from the roof gutters, my fingers numb around the pin, and whispered, "If anyone asks, I am expanding my academic access." Doreen crouched beside me in a dark cloak, because apparently my family's reaction to crime was to supervise it. "If anyone asks," she whispered, "I am dragging you home by your ear." I looked at her. That answer lacks institutional ambition. She shoved my shoulder. "Open the latch before your ambition gets us both arrested." "You were supposed to stay at Voss and Ledger," I whispered as the pin caught inside the latch. "You were supposed to stop making decisions that require witnesses," Doreen whispered back. We were both disappointed. The latch clicked. I froze, listening through the rain. No shout, no bell, no clerk appearing with a ledger, and the personal joy of someone about to ruin a night. I pushed the window inward, and a breath of cold archive air slid over my face. Vellum, dust, old ink, dried sealing wax, and the faint mineral tang of stored lithic records. The room beyond was narrow, shelved floor to ceiling, with rows of sealed casebooks chained to iron rails. "You still have the list?" Doreen asked. I tapped my chest. "Memorized." She narrowed her eyes. "You mean copied onto your cuff?" "Memory assistance is not dishonesty," I said. "It is humble scholarship." She grabbed my sleeve, saw the ink marks written under the cuff edge, and sighed. "My mistake," she said. "You are a criminal scholar." I slipped through the window first and landed between two reading desks with less grace than I preferred. My boot struck a brass footstool. The sound cracked through the archive like judgment. Doreen hissed, "Dorian!" "The footstool attacked," I whispered. She climbed in after me, lighter, quieter, smug without needing to speak. I hated that. At the far end of the archive, a ward lamp glowed blue above a locked inner door, marked with the seal of the Keepers of Measured Power. Restricted Familial Service Records. I had seen the door 3 times while carrying crates for Voss, and had spent each time pretending not to care. Now my throat tightened as I crossed toward it. My parents had been reduced to memorial stone, public account, and bad dreams. Somewhere behind that door, if the city had not burned the truth already, there would be paper. Names, dates, orders. Someone's handwriting pretending murder was logistics. Doreen caught my wrist before I touched the lock. "Last chance to leave," she whispered. I looked at the gray seal on the door and felt the crystalline scar under my bandage warm. "No," I said. "Last chance was before they lied about the dead." The inner lock was not mechanical. Of course it was not. Mechanical locks were for cupboards, stables, and people poor enough to believe metal kept secrets. This one held a thin ether ward under the key plate, a shimmer of current waiting to taste a registered signature. I knelt in front of it and studied the faint pulse along the bronze rim. "Can you open it?" Doreen whispered. "Yes," I said. That sounded quick. "Confidence is how fools introduce themselves," I said, then lowered my voice. "I can probably confuse it." She crouched beside me. "Probably? The Academy charges extra for certainty." The ward pulsed again. "Registered staff only. Instructor class. Vaultkeeper oversight mark?" I had none of those. What I had was a scar that bent rules, a fragment under floorboards across the district, and a growing talent for making bad ideas work once. I pressed 2 fingers to the stone beside the door, pulled a thread of lithic stillness into my palm, then touched the keyplate with the edge of that borrowed weight. The ward hesitated, not opened, not broken, just uncertain whether the door had become part of itself. "That is new," I whispered. Doreen said, "Good new or screaming new?" The lock clicked. "Quiet new," I said, and pushed the door open. The restricted room was smaller than I expected and colder than it had any right to be. A single slate desk stood in the center, surrounded by cabinet stacks labeled by year, conflict, house service, and casualty classification. Casualty classification. The phrase sat in my chest like a stone. Doreen stood near the door, listening, while I moved to the cabinet marked Outer District Defense Actions, 17 years prior. My fingers moved too fast over the file tabs. Heartlander, Eric. Heartlander, Selah. Joint Field Service. Closed inquiry. Redacted. 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 Found them? Doreen whispered. I did not answer at first, because the folder in my hands seemed too thin to hold 2 lives. I opened it on the slate desk. Most of the first page had been blacked out in thick ink. My father's name remained. My mother's name remained. Their assignment: escort of seized contraband sources from an unauthorized storage site near the Ash Canal. The attackers were listed as Vitalist-aligned raiders, then the phrase had been crossed out and replaced with unidentified hostile elements. Unidentified, I said softly. That is what officials call a face they recognize. Doreen leaned over the file, her shoulder pressed against mine. What is that line? She asked. Near the bottom of the second page, beneath a block of redaction. A clerk had failed to bury one sentence completely. The ink had thinned enough for the words to show under lamp glare. Transfer involved early null shards. Exposure risk to initiate cohorts unacceptable. I read it once. Twice. My mouth went dry. Null shards, I whispered. Doreen looked at me. Starfall shards? She asked. Maybe the old name, I said. Maybe the honest name. The next page listed 3 signatories, but 2 were blacked out. The third had been partially scraped rather than inked. Only the final letters remained. Len A.R. My wrist burned. The dream returned in a flash, my father shouting through fire, thunder swallowing the first half of a name. Yellen, R. Drake. I heard myself breathe too loudly. Doreen gripped my sleeve. Dorian, she said. We need to copy this and leave. I touched the page where the scraped letters hid behind damage. They were not guarding a right hall, I said. They were moving shards. Dorian? She said again, sharper. Footsteps sounded outside the outer archive. We both went still. The ward lamp above the inner door flickered blue, then white. Someone had entered the north hall. Copying evidence while footsteps approach is excellent training for handwriting under terror. I tore open my hidden journal, flattened it on the slate desk, and began scraping notes with a graphite stick so fast the words looked drunk. Joint Field Service, seized contraband, unauthorized storage, unidentified hostile elements, null shards, exposure risk, initiate cohorts, partial signatory, I muttered as I wrote. Doreen stood at the door, one hand on the frame, one hand on the little bread knife she had insisted on bringing because she had a realistic opinion of my plans. 2 people, she whispered. Outer archive. 1 heavy, 1 light. I did not ask how she could tell. Doreen had grown up listening for danger while pretending not to. Do they know we are here? I whispered. The heavy one is breathing like a clerk with stairs, she whispered. So no. I turned the page in the file and found a narrow attachment sealed under old wax. Half the seal had cracked. Inside was a casualty addendum with a diagram of the same sigil I had seen on the dead harvester near Stoneward. Black hook, broken scale, star notch. My hand stopped. There, I said. Doreen looked back, saw the mark, and her face hardened. Copy it, she said. I am copying, I whispered. Copy faster, she whispered. I am not a printing press. You are about to be a prisoner. The outer archive door opened with a soft scrape. A man muttered. Registrar, said the north lamp flickered. A woman answered. Storm residue. Everything flickers since the fall. I slid the casualty addendum beneath my journal and traced the sigil as best I could. My wrist flared violet. The graphite line darkened on its own, almost burning into the page. I jerked my hand back. No, I whispered at the scar. Do not become dramatic now. Doreen snapped her fingers once. Move. I shoved the file pages back into order badly, then paused and forced myself to align them. Panic made thieves messy. Mess made inspectors curious. Dorian, Doreen said, voice tight. The footsteps came closer, stopping near the chained public case books. A key ring jingled. Inner ward? The man asked. Check it, the woman said. I shut the file, slid it into the cabinet, and pressed the drawer closed with 2 fingers. The ward lamp above us brightened. The inner door had not relocked properly, because of course it had not. I reached for the key plate, but Doreen grabbed my collar and pulled me behind a cabinet stack as the door opened. A clerk's lantern beam cut across the desk, the sealed cabinets, the floor. I held my breath so hard my ribs hurt. Doreen's hand clamped over my wrist, directly above the scar, as if she could silence light with pressure. The clerk took 1 step inside, Cold in here, he said. The woman behind him said, "It is an archive, Pellin. It is supposed to feel dead. That is not policy," he muttered. I saw the window vent above the rear cabinet, too small for dignity and just large enough for desperation. I pointed. Doreen mouthed, "No." I nodded. She mouthed something worse. When the clerk turned toward the desk, I pulled a thread of lithic from the floor seam and softened the cabinet's rear catch. The vent panel slipped loose into my hands. It made the tiniest click. The clerk turned. Doreen shoved me upward. I scrambled through the vent like a rat with legal problems, landed in the drainage passage behind the archive, then caught Doreen as she slid after me. The clerk shouted behind us. A bell rang. We ran through the narrow dark with my journal clutched under my coat and my heart pounding hard enough to be used as evidence. Master Voss was waiting in the workshop when we returned before dawn, which proved either he had guessed everything or the universe had grown tired of pretending I was subtle. He stood beside the cold stove with a lamp burning low at his shoulder, spectacles in one hand, a sealed cup of bitter leaf tea untouched on the table. "Do not speak," he said when I opened my mouth. I closed it. Doreen stepped in behind me, rain dripping from her cloak, chin lifted like she had not just crawled through an archive vent and lost a respectable portion of skin from one elbow. Voss looked at her first. "Were you seen?" he asked. "Not clearly," she said. "That is not no," he said. "No," she said. He turned to me. "And the records?" I hesitated. His voice sharpened. "Dorian." I pulled the journal from under my coat and set it on the table. "Copied," I said, "not stolen." Voss stared at the journal as if it might bite. "You broke into restricted familial service records and left the originals," he said. "How disciplined." "I am maturing," I said. "Do not decorate this with jokes." Doreen moved toward the stairs. "I should clean up," she said. "No," Voss said. "You should hear this." She stopped. The room changed then. The old workbenches, the hanging tools, the soot-stained windows, the cracked cup near the sink, all of it seemed to lean toward him. Voss sat slowly at the table and opened my journal to the copied page. His finger hovered over the words "null shards," then over the traced sigil. "Your mother's name was Sela Hartlander," he said. "Your father was Eric." My throat tightened, because hearing their names from his mouth made them less like memorial ghosts and more like people who had once stood in rooms with him. "You knew them," I said. It was not a question. Voss nodded. "I trained beside Sela when she was still faster than caution and twice as rude." Eric joined later. He pretended to be sensible because someone had to. Doreen looked at me. I could not speak. Voss swallowed. "They saved my life twice. The second time they told me if anything happened to them, I was to watch over you if the city left me alive. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it." "Watch over me?" I said. "That is what you call letting me clean conduits while everyone lied?" Voss flinched. "I call it keeping you visible enough to feed and obscure enough to survive." "You knew there was more to their death," I said. "Yes," he said. The word struck harder because he did not soften it. Doreen's voice went cold. "And you said nothing." Voss looked at her. "I was ordered to say nothing." "By Halvain?" I asked. "No," Voss said. "Halvain was not yet the blade he is now. The order came from higher." My hand moved to the copied signatory before I meant it to. "Yellen Ardrake," I said. Voss closed his eyes. That was confession enough, but he gave the words anyway. "Lord Yellen Ardrake chaired the closed inquiry," he said. "He ruled the raid a vitalist attack. He sealed the shard records. He buried your parents as loyal casualties, and made anyone who questioned it look like a traitor trying to weaken the rights." The room went silent. Then Doreen said, "And you let him?" Voss opened his eyes. "Yes," he said. "I let him." The confession should have satisfied something in me. It did not. Truth, I discovered, is less like food, and more like opening a locked pantry to find another locked door. I stood across from Voss with my hands flat on the table and felt the scar under my bandage throb in time with the hidden fragment beneath the workshop floor. "Tell me what the null shards are," I said. Voss's face tightened. "The public name is Starfall Shards now," he said. "Pretty language for ugly matter," I said. "Do not correct me with branding." Doreen moved beside me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. Voss noticed and looked away as if that small loyalty hurt him. No one knows their full origin, he said. They fall rarely, usually during violent storms. Some fragments have been recovered from old war sites, the Null Barrens, sealed tomb caches, and illegal laboratories. They do not behave like ordinary matter. They distort siphon affinity, amplify detection signatures, and in certain cases appear to borrow the rules of whatever source surrounds them. Borrow, I said. A polite word. You prefer steal? He asked. I prefer accurate. Voss folded his hands together, but his fingers did not stay still. Most people who touch a true fragment experience fever, temporary resonance, or nothing at all. A smaller number develop scars. Fewer survive long-term exposure without overdraw, degeneration, memory loss, or classification. I felt Doreen go rigid beside me. Classification means prison, she said. Sometimes, Voss said, sometimes study, sometimes service, sometimes disappearance wearing a nicer name. I looked down at the journal. The copied sigil stared back at me. And factions hunt them, I said. Vault keepers, to regulate them. Black harvesters, to sell them. Vitalists, to break right monopolies. Ascensionists, to prove first siphons can be changed. The gilded houses, because anything rare becomes inheritance if you hold it long enough. Voss nodded. Subjects who touch null shards attract all of them. Subjects, I said softly. You mean people? Voss met my eyes. I mean people after institutions remove their names. Doreen's voice cut in before mine could. What happens if Dorian's first siphon comes while he is marked? Voss did not answer. That was answer enough to make my stomach drop. What happens? She repeated. He looked at me then, and I saw the mentor, the coward, the survivor, and the friend of my dead parents trapped in one exhausted man. It could bind normally, he said. It could fail. It could fracture into cross-affinity drift. It could make his signature unreadable. Or it could give the Vault Keepers an excuse to call him too dangerous to remain free. My mouth went dry. That sounds dramatic, I said. I hate when my life lacks moderation. Doreen rounded on me. Do not joke. I am not joking, I said, and my voice came out rough. I am sanding down panic so it fits in the room. Voss reached toward my journal, then stopped before touching it. Give me the fragment, he said. I can hide it better than you. I looked at Doreen. Her face said yes and no at once. She wanted it gone. She wanted me safe. She knew those were no longer the same thing. No, I said. Voss's jaw tightened. Dorian, you hid my parents' truth for years, I said. Do not ask me to hand you the only thing everyone is still afraid of. The worst betrayals are not the clean ones. Clean betrayal wears a villain's face, burns your house, steals your coin, and saves you the trouble of doubt. Voss's betrayal sat across from me with tired eyes, shaking hands, and memories of my parents that sounded too warm to hate easily. That made it worse. I wanted him cruel. I wanted him smug. I wanted him to say he had chosen survival and would do it again so I could throw anger at him without it coming back carrying grief. Instead, he said, I have failed you, and the room became too small for fury. Yes, I said. He lowered his head. Doreen's hand found my sleeve. But I did not look at her, because if I did, the anger would crack into something less useful. You knew my parents were tied to the shards, I said. You knew Yellen sealed the inquiry. You knew the Vault Keepers were not just witnesses. And you let me walk into Halvane's questions blind. I kept you from being pulled into the old case, Voss said. You were a child. I am still being pulled, I said. Only now I have no map because the adults burned it for my own good. Voss looked up sharply. I did not burn it. No, I said. You shelved it in a locked room and hoped grief forgot how to read. Doreen whispered, Dorian. I shook my head. No. He gets to hear it. Voss's face went pale. But he did not defend himself. That almost undid me. Sela would have hated my silence, he said. Eric would have understood it and hated me anyway. The names struck again. I hated him for knowing how to say them. I hated myself for wanting him to keep talking. Do not use them to make this noble, I said. It was fear. He nodded. Yes, he said. It was fear. I left before dawn painted the windows. Not far, just into the back room, where the loose floorboard hid the wrapped fragment in its crate beneath old valve casings and a roll of cracked conduit cloth. Doreen followed me and shut the door behind her. Are you giving it to him? She asked. No, I said. Are you keeping it because you trust yourself, or because you do not trust him? Yes, I said. She sighed. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one. I knelt, lifted the floorboard, and checked the wrappings. The fragment pulsed through cloth, wax, and lead-lined strips, answering the scar in my wrist. I did not tell Voss how often it answered me now. I did not tell him the resonance had grown stronger after the archive. I did not tell him that when Halvain stood too close or Tavian watched too carefully, the shard seemed to wake like it smelled hunger. Those facts stayed mine. Because Doreen needed one person in this city who would put her above every sealed file and faction slogan. I will protect you, I said quietly. She crouched beside me. I did not ask for a vow. You are getting one anyway. Vows make people stupid. Then I am finally using my natural gifts. She touched the back of my hand, careful of the scar. Do not protect me by becoming something I have to fear, she said. I looked at the wrapped fragment and thought of living warmth under my senses, of power arriving without the right pain, of my parents burning behind a stone wall. I will try, I said. She heard the weakness in it. So did I. The Vault Keepers staged their public safety demonstration 3 days after the Stoneward raid, because nothing calms a frightened city like officials arranging dangerous objects on a platform. The demonstration filled the lower plaza before the first hall, with gray banners hung between lampposts and clerks handing out printed assurances that all unauthorized rumors were punishable, false, or both. Master Voss was ordered to assist with stabilization equipment. I was ordered to assist Master Voss. Doreen was ordered by Lady Quen's household to attend as an apprentice observer, which meant the three of us stood in different sections of the same trap and pretended placement was coincidence. This is a reassurance event, Voss murmured as we unpacked containment rods beside the dais. Do not call it a trap where ears can invoice you. A reassurance event with inspectors, scouts, armed clerks, and a crowd positioned for panic, I said. My mistake. Very soothing. Voss tightened a rod housing. Dorian, I am assisting, I said. Under duress. It gives my hands character. Inspector Halvain opened the demonstration with the polished calm of a man who could turn a drowning into a procedural update. Citizens of the Glass Cities, he said from the dais, voice carried by a brass resonance cone. Recent events have caused concern regarding unstable matter, criminal raids, and malicious rumor. The Keepers of Measured Power remain committed to safe rights, regulated sources, and the protection of every initiate awaiting the day of first breath. Someone in the crowd shouted, What about the missing Stoneward initiates? A clerk moved toward the voice. Halvain raised one hand, and the clerk stopped. Recovery efforts continue, Halvain said. Speculation endangers them. I leaned toward Voss. Translation. Silence helps us decide which truth survives. Voss did not look at me. Rod 6, he said. I handed it over. On the far side of the plaza, Doreen stood with a row of household apprentices, gray token at her throat, eyes on me. Her face said behave. My face probably said too late. The demonstration used a minor lithic core recovered from a legal quarry reserve, or so the placard claimed. The core sat inside a glass containment bell at the dais center, a fist-sized stone threaded with silver mineral veins. Halvain explained how regulated dead matter siphoning preserved life, stabilized labor, and prevented the moral collapse associated with illicit vitae practice. A properly measured source, he said, protects the siphoner from overdraw and protects the public from unstable output. He says this while standing near 16 armed men, I whispered. Safety has excellent posture. Voss elbowed me. The core pulsed when the senior demonstrator placed both palms on the containment frame. The plaza stones hummed. Then the hum slipped. Not much, just enough that the core's resonance skittered sideways toward the crowd. I felt it before the instruments did. A jitter in the mineral tone. A crack in the controlled rhythm. Voss hissed. Brace rod 4. I grabbed it, but the scar in my wrist flared before my hand touched metal. The core was not unstable by accident. Something had been seeded into its housing. A violet spectrum trace, faint as a breath. My stomach dropped. Master, I whispered. That core has Starfall residue. Voss's eyes widened. Do not touch it with your skin. Halvain's gaze snapped toward us from the dais, as if he had been waiting for exactly that sentence. Halvain did not stop the demonstration. That told me more than any confession could have. He let Voss recalibrate the containment rods, let the senior demonstrator smile through a tremor, let the crowd clap when the lithic core steadied under controlled draw. Then he waited until applause covered the scrape of his boots and stepped down beside me. Heartlander, he said, you noticed the instability early. I kept my eyes on the containment frame. I have a tragic gift for noticing things about to hurt me. He stood close enough that the silver pins at his collar caught the core's light. Master Voss has trained you well. He has tried, I said. I remain resistant to improvement. Halvane's mouth almost moved. Resistance can be admirable in apprentices, less so in citizens. That sounds like something carved over a cell door. Only the old ones, he said. That startled me again, and I hated him for being funnier than expected. Humor from power is not charm. It is a blade showing it can also cut fruit. He guided me 2 steps away from Voss without touching me. That was another talent of authority, making your own feet betray you. The city is entering a delicate period, Halvane said. Black harvesters striking reserves, vitalists radicalizing students, ascensionist reformers exploiting grief. In such times, uncertain loyalties become dangerous. I looked at him. Mine are very certain. To whom? He asked. The answer came instantly in my chest. Doreen. But I did not give him her name. To survival, I said. A flexible house, he said. Hard to burn. Yet many keep trying. His eyes lowered to my wrist, still wrapped, then to the rod in my hand. You have talent. Irregular, undisciplined, possibly unauthorized, but talent. The keepers can protect talent when it serves public stability. I smiled because rage needed teeth. Is this the part where you offer me soup in a gray room? This is the part where I offer you a chance to avoid becoming a tool of people who will use your anger and discard your body. You prefer to use my body with benefits? I asked. A nearby clerk turned red, trying not to react. Halvane's voice softened. That was worse. Your parents made a mistake, he said. The world went narrow. Voss turned toward us, but a clerk intercepted him with a question about the rods. Doreen, across the plaza, saw my face and stepped out of line before another apprentice caught her sleeve. Careful, I said. Halvane held my gaze. They mistook personal outrage for strategy. They trusted the wrong allies. They died before their evidence could matter. Do not speak about them like a lesson. Then learn faster than they did, he said. For one breath, I felt the plaza's matter sharpen around me. Stone underfoot, iron in rod frames, heat in lamp wicks, living pulse in the crowd. The scar burned. Eager. I shoved the pull down until my wrist shook. Halvane watched the tremor. He had wanted that. Not an explosion. A confirmation. Loyalty, he said, is not affection. It is the choice of whose order prevents the worst outcome. I leaned closer and smiled with every bit of hate I could polish. Inspector, I said, if the worst outcome has a uniform, I promise to read the collar before choosing. He stepped back. Do that, he said. And keep your head down. He returned to the dais. I stood with the rod in my hand, smiling like a fool, while every part of me bristled hard enough to bleed. That night, Voss and Ledger Siphonworks was torn open like someone had searched it with anger pretending to be haste. We returned from the demonstration after curfew, Voss silent, Doreen furious, me still carrying Halvane's words under my ribs like glass. The front lock hung broken. The signboard had been scratched with a hook-shaped cut. Inside, drawers gaped. Tool trays lay overturned. Residue jars had been smashed across the floor, their contents streaking the boards in dull mineral stains. Do not step in anything, Voss said, his voice suddenly flat. Too late, I said, looking at the black dust under my boot. I have joined the evidence. Doreen grabbed the back of my coat before I moved farther. No jokes, she said. Her voice shook. That ended the joke more effectively than dignity could have. Voss lit a lamp. The room leapt into hard shadow. His office cabinet had been opened. The apprentice lockers, too. My cot beneath the stairs had been dragged aside. I moved before thinking. Doreen said. I ignored her and crossed to the loose floorboard near my cot. It was still down, too still. No scratches around the edge. No sign anyone had lifted it. Hope arrived, stupid and bright. Then I saw the clue placed on top of the floorboard. Rusk Bellamy's black card, the one with the sickle and blank circle, lying in plain sight where no one but a searcher would think to leave it. My pocket went cold. I reached inside. Empty. No, I whispered. Doreen saw the card and looked at me. That was in your coat. Yes, I said. Voss stepped closer. What is it? A planted problem? I said. The rear door slammed open, and 2 vault-keeper clerks entered with rods raised, followed by Inspector Halvane, as if he had been standing outside, waiting for the correct dramatic moment. Report of unlawful entry, he said. How efficient, I said. We had not screamed yet. Halvane's gaze dropped to the card on the floor. Black Harvester mark, he said. Troubling. Convenient, I said. A clerk lifted the card with tongs while another began scanning the room. The rod passed over the floorboards, clicked once near my cot, then sharpened into a high, thin whine. My blood went cold. The fragment beneath the floor pulsed in answer, muffled but awake. Doreen stepped between the clerk and the cot. The workshop was just robbed, she said. You are contaminating a scene. The clerk blinked. I am authorized to assess. And are you authorized to plant before or after assessing? She snapped. Halvain looked at her with mild interest. Miss Veilhart, he said, you have acquired confidence from household work quickly. It was cheaper than obedience, she said. My heart would have admired her if it had not been busy trying to escape. Voss moved toward the clerk. That area contains unstable student residues, he said. I will handle it. Halvain raised one hand. Everyone stopped. His eyes found mine. Heartlander, he said. Why would a Black Harvester token be beside your bed? Terrible decorating taste, I said. Try again. I stepped closer, letting anger cover fear. Because someone put it there. Who? He asked. Tavian's face flashed in my mind. Rusk's smile. The Vitalist Kiln. Halvain himself, dry under his umbrella, always arriving exactly where fear needed him. Someone who wants your search to look earned, I said. The rod screamed again. Beneath the floor, the shard answered with a violet pulse strong enough to glow between two boards. Halvain saw it. Doreen saw it. Voss whispered. Dorian. I looked down as the light touched my boots, and for the first time since the sky fell, I had no joke ready. Here ends Chapter 4, Old Journals.